We now have a watch-along, and this has been a popular feature. We did this for the first ever 5-star match a few weeks back on The Experience. Today we're going to do the first ever 6-star match, and I should make a few notes about how to sync this up. The most complete version on YouTube is a video that Scott Bowden actually put up, the Kentucky Fried Wrestling page on YouTube. The title of the video is Bloody Greatness at the Gardens. The upload date is November 25th, 2017, with a video runtime of 11 minutes and 14 seconds. So we're going to do commentary over this. For those of you who are patrons at patreon.com/Cornette, we are going to put this video up with the audio commentary synced, so you get to check it out all in one instead of listening to the podcast and playing the video separately. And the video quality of the one we're going to put up will be a little bit better than the one that's currently available on YouTube, but I guess these videos all came from you. Is that correct?
Most of them that are on YouTube indirectly. I think this one, I believe it's a couple of generations removed, but it looks like my original. I still had an antenna in these days, the one that turned on the rotor and was up on the top of my roof so I could get all the wrestling shows. And when they put up the big new bank building in downtown Louisville, it put a ghost in Channel 3 because all of the transmitting towers for the TV stations in the Louisville area were over in Floyd's Knobs, Indiana, the highest point of ground. And coming out to the eastern part of the county, the signal had to go right by the bank building, and I got a ghost. But when Lance would turn around, his nose would be 6 inches long. It'd be amazing. But anyway, nevertheless, we need to start this out. First of all, everybody, first 6-star match. Oh, my God. Is it going to be better than Kenta Kobashi versus fucking whoever the fuck? No. Here's, first of all, what the rating system originally was supposed to be. Obviously, everybody knows the story. The only other smart fan in Louisville that actually, besides me, that actually traded tapes and programs and results of the matches and newsletters and joined the fan clubs and everything was my friend Norman Weasel Dooley. And Weasel started doing his own little newsletter called Weasel's World of Wrestling, where he would just type out on legal-size sheets of paper the results of all the matches in Louisville and that he went to. He used to go to St. Louis. His mom would take him over there, and sometimes he'd go with me to Memphis or whatever. So he would type up the results. And then he started getting into commentary and opinion on the matches and wisecracks. And of course, Uncle Dave Meltzer has publicly admitted that that's where he was one of the 57 people that was getting Weasel's World at the time, and that's where he got this from. But one day I was on the phone with Norman, and I was reading his newsletter at the same time, but I was also, we were talking about the matches, I was also looking at the Leonard Maltin movie guide to see what was on TV that night and what I was going to watch. And I said, Weasel, the way you're going into all this detail and critiquing these matches, you ought to give them stars like they do in the movies. He said, that's a good idea. And he started doing it, and Dave stole it, and here we go. But originally, it was just kind of a measuring stick. Like 1 star was the match kind of sucked. 2 stars was the match was kind of average, about what we expected. 3 stars was, wow, that was really good. And 4 stars was they tore the fucking house down. It wasn't anything about what moves were done, or, how the booking was, because we didn't even know what booking was then. And that's why I have a better, modern viewpoint of this match we're about to watch than I did even then, because the booking was so brilliant and it was involved in really doing great business. We'll get to. But anyway, there was no, every once in a while, Weasel might say, well, this match was good, but boy, that finish sucked, or it was a letdown or whatever, but that was about it. And I didn't confer with him and debate the star ratings that he was given to matches past. We, every once in a while, like with the Lawler and Funk match, after we had both seen something that was fucking wild and great and crazy, we'd come up to, wow, did you see that? Boy, and that's when we said Funk and Lawler, that has to be 5 stars because it's better than anything we've ever seen live. And 4 stars, wow, what a great match that was. But we didn't minutely break it down, and I didn't know what he gave most of the matches until I read his sheet. It wasn't even a newsletter. It was just typed pages. I didn't know what he gave Chief Thundercloud versus Plowboy Frazier and didn't care. I believe one time he gave it negative as many stars as there are in the Andromeda Galaxy. Because there was Plowboy Frazier and Chief Thundercloud, the opening match. Who gives a shit, right? But anyway, so that's the rating system. And the first 5-star match we talked about was Lawler and Funk, because basically in experiencing a match, especially live, we didn't rate matches on tape or on TV that we saw. That wasn't the same thing, because you had to be there live, because it was the crowd. Did it get over? We didn't care what it looked like in the ring. Was it exciting to watch? And did it get over with the people? And did it keep our attention like it caught everybody else's? Of course, we liked big bumps or shocking things, and you didn't get them constantly, so they were even more special then. We loved to see Lawler take the backdrop from Joe LeDuc, where he would get the ridiculous hang time of, like, you could count to 4 before he'd land, and he'd be 3 feet up above LeDuc's head. Or, you know, whatever the case, we'd like to see Billy Robinson doing his backbreaker and doing his cool shit. We like whatever the fuck. But if those moments were in a match that didn't register, make sense, or get the people into it, or get the, you know, across what it was supposed to get across, it wasn't a great match. So anyway, that's that. As far as why this was the first 6-star match, it didn't have anything to do with the match. The match, as you will see from seeing part of it, they join it in the heat. It's just a standard Memphis tag match. Bill Dundee and a Dream Machine against Wayne Ferris and Kevin Sullivan. It's what they did with the finish and what they did with the angle afterwards that kicked it up into holy shit. Because you saw not only incredible violent brawling through the building that was never done in those days, or only very limitedly done. In Louisville, they'd get away with it every couple of years. But it was put together in such a way that they hooked the people, and they kept building it and building it and building it until finally the cops were literally, you will see this on camera, carrying fucking fans that were trying to attack everybody out of the goddamn building by their arms and legs. It was amazing for the way that they put it together, and they hooked the people and the staggered run-ins and the way they built it until finally at the end, you wanted to see more, and that's exactly what they were counting on. Sort of like I said, that match with Michael Elgin and Davey Richards in Ring of Honor, 2012 WrestleMania weekend, everybody went crazy over. It was the best independent match of modern times or whatever the fuck. The first 10 minutes was blasé indie wrestling. And in the second 10 minutes, they turned it on and created a fucking moment. So if I haven't already taken the piss out of the star rating system and talked and basically said how bullshit it was always to begin with anyway, I will tell you that this match became the first 6-star match and only lasted a week, because the next week was 6.5 stars when they had the 8-man tag as a return. We said, well, it has to be 6.5 because it was better than last week. And then 2 things happened. 1, we didn't want to get ridiculous and start saying 7 stars and 9 stars. And 2, they pulled back. We had seen Lawler versus Funk with this wild, bloody brawling. And then we'd seen these 8-man fiasco matches for an entire month. And they didn't want to go too far, or that would become normal, and then they'd never be able to shoot another angle that resonated again. So they drew it back. So the territory did steady business for the rest of the year, but we didn't get any more 5-star bullshit because they couldn't set expectations too high. That wouldn't make any sense. Anyway, so to set this thing up, 1981, early in the year, Lawler had come back from his broken leg. And for the first 4 months, Jimmy Hart brought all of the top rivals that he had into the Mid-South Coliseum and into Louisville and Lexington, some of the other bigger towns, to try to break Lawler's leg again. Joe LeDuc, Austin Idol, Hulk Hogan, Terry Funk, Dory Funk Jr., Jack Briscoe had been in. They had done tremendous business for several months in a row. Jimmy Hart's really come into his own as the top manager. He's only been into business a year and a half at that point. And they had done good business, but now we're into May, and the program with Funk and Lawler is winding up. And at the same time, they've lost some talent. Jimmy Valiant, I believe, has gone to the Carolinas for the summer. Tommy Rich has gone back to Georgia. Billy Robinson's gone back to Vern. Austin Idol has gone probably back home. And they were short on talent. And they had other guys coming in over the summer. Kevin Sullivan had just started at the end of April. He was a star off Georgia Television and TBS. Steve Kern was about to come in. Stan Lane was about to come in. Mr. Onita, the Onita, when he was a rookie, and the Masafucci, when he was a rookie, had just started, but nobody had ever heard of him, and they were underneath guys. They were just starting to get over. The Gibsons were going to be coming back in later on in the year, but in the May-June period, the talent was fucking thin in the territory. And Jerry Jarrett knew that he needed something to transition the month of June until he gets some other things going, and some more of these guys were going to be starting, etc. So he came up with this idea. The reason I know that he did it was because when they came to Louisville, Lance never came to Louisville, maybe once a year. And Jerry Jarrett at that point in time didn't come to Louisville that often. But they were both there that night, and they brought the camera, and Randy West was going to be filming. And the purported reason why they had the camera there, Lance even got in the ring and said hello to everybody in Louisville, all the fans, etc. Good to see you again. We've got our camera here because our main event tonight is a 2-ring battle royal, and we're going to capture that for the television program, blah, 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 right? So people, okay, but the battle royal is the big deal. So that covered that they were doing an angle that they never did in Louisville anymore, and that's why Lance was there to shoot it. And from working with Jerry Jarrett later on, I can tell that he had the personal hand in laying this out, because he did it like a really old-fashioned Southern-style wrestling match. They had started and shined it was for the Southern Tag Team title, and they shined the baby faces up first, Bill Dundee and the Dream Machine, who had been a heel when Lawler first came back, but had just recently turned on Hart and his first family and had become a babyface. And really, besides Jerry Lawler and Dutch Mantell, Bill Dundee and the Dream Machine were the only 4 babyfaces in the territory that meant anything at that point in time for selling tickets. The heels were even less. It was down to Wayne Ferris, who had been a top guy for the past couple of years. He and Larry Latham, with Danny Davis as their manager, my old partner in OVW, had been the Blonde Bombers, and they'd been on top for a while. But Larry had left the territory, gone to Louisiana. Kevin Sullivan had just come in, but at least I said he was a star from TBS. And Jimmy Hart had heat because he'd been managing all the heels. The rest of the heels for this month, they had the Nightmares, who was Danny Davis. They'd put him under a mask since he'd primarily been a manager, even though he'd been trained to wrestle by Herb Welch, same guy trained David Schultz. Nightmare number 2 was David Oswald, a kid from Arkansas that had just broke into business. They put a mask on him, said, okay, now you're a Nightmare. Fucci and Onita had just come in. They were green. And that was pretty much all that. And Chick Donovan had just started. So anyway, Jarrett laid this match out. Dream Machine, brand new babyface. They shine him and they shine Dundee. And then they cut Dream off and they got a bit of heat on him so that he could give Dundee a tag. Jarrett liked to do in those old matches, especially the 2 out of 3 falls, he'd do 2 sets of heat. Dundee gets the tag and makes a little comeback, and then they cut him off. That's where this video is going to start, where they're getting the heat on Bill Dundee. And that's something else Jarrett liked. He liked a long set of heat where the baby face would stay alive and wouldn't be completely dead and keep the people in it, but the heels would beat on him and keep him from the tag for a long time. And then finally, the hot tag would come, people would get a big blow, but he didn't want that this time. There is no hot tag in this because he wanted Dundee to be legal. So Dream Machine comes in, and at the end of it makes a little misdirection, but Dundee's legal when Jimmy Hart comes in for the DQ, blah, blah, blah. Then the heels get tons of heat after the bell, where the baby faces keep trying to fight back, but they're just overwhelmed by the numbers until they start the staggered run-ins. And especially since Lawler was the biggest star, when Lawler hit, that always meant that the day was saved. That's why he hits first, because you won't hear the people, you'll hear us. But when you watch this match, as you should, with Lance Russell's commentary, he's great on the call. And also the people's reactions. That's where the 6 stars comes from. When you hear the way these people react to everything in ever increasing intensity. Lawler comes out to make a save, so the people think that's it and they blow, but then he gets cut off. And then the heat starts again, and it goes so long, just long enough that you don't think anybody's coming to help. And then here comes Dutch Mantell, and every punch he throws, the people are going boom, boom, boom through the whole building because it's continuing. And then when they hit the ground and they start fighting, the people are really up, but they stop in the back area. And I will explain where they were. They were in a public aisleway from the time they leave ringside to when they go back past the blue folding chairs. The blue folding chairs were not set up for the wrestling event. That was behind ringside. The blue folding chairs, the nice ones, were the ones they brought out for school graduations, because this was the end of May. And so the lady in the skirt with the red hair is the manager, June Johnson of the Louisville Gardens, watching these wrestlers trashing their fucking, getting blood all over their goddamn bright blue graduation chairs. The photographer that you see next to her in the white shirt trying to snap all these pictures, I don't know who the fuck he is. And when they get in the back, then they start going up in the bleachers. There was always an end section of the Louisville Gardens, farthest from the ring and closest to the dressing room entrances. Heels came out on the right side, babyface on the left side. And they just wouldn't sell general admission tickets in those sections. So they weren't open to the public, so the guys could go up there and play around a little bit, and the fans allegedly couldn't get to them. Although, as I mentioned, you'll see one carried out. They arrested either 3 or 4 in the course of this 2-minute fight because the fans were so carried away that they believed what they were seeing was legitimately happening, and they came to help their fucking favorites. They thought a riot was going on. The guys were completely out of control. So you'll see some of that. But then, as I've mentioned, fighting in the cool locations gets old quick. And so when you watch this, it's like, holy shit, this is great. But when you go back and time it, it's only a few minutes they're out of the ring, but it leaves an impact. And that's what they were wanting to do. An angle is to create interest in a match or a program, not to give them the whole thing then. Jerry Jarrett knew that the next week he was coming back with a goddamn 8-man tag match between all these guys in this brawl as his main event. So he didn't want to give them the whole thing. He didn't want to give them the resolution. He wanted to give them the trailer, the movie trailer that made this fucking movie look like it was the most exciting thing ever. And that's what this angle is for the match that would happen the following week. And then that match, because it's the first match of the program, better be a great one, because you're setting the tone. Now, if you've done an angle that has piqued people's attention and they come to see the match and the match sells tickets and they're really up for it, if it's a shitty match, they don't want to see it again. And you want to bring it back for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. So instead, you make the first match the best of the bunch. And then as long as it draws, you make each match as good as you can to keep drawing. But that's why in those days, the blow-off match, the last one, was often the least of the entire program, because that's the last time you were presenting that match. And as long as the babyface went over, the people were going to be happy. So you didn't need to kill yourself, because you weren't going to sell that again the following week anyway. It was going off the menu. That's why everybody that was wrapped up over the last Battle of Atlanta was so let down because that was the blow off of their program. They'd done all the wild, bloody, death-defying shit in the world to build up to that point. But then it was done. And the match that was afterwards, what was it? Ole and Paul Ellering was better because that's the direction they were going. So anyway, with all of these things said, it was a Southern Tag Team title match. They're getting heat on Bill Dundee. Referee Paul Morton, Ricky Morton's father, is the referee. And I guess should we start it?
Well, I guess we should note for everyone who's going to watch along with us with the video that's currently on YouTube. And once again, you can watch along with us. The video and the audio sync together. Patreon.com/Cornette should be up within the next day or so. But what we're going to start, our starting point will be pause your video right after Lance Russell, sitting at the desk with Dave Brown, says, "Okay, no more to be said." After the word said, that is where you pause your video. We'll pick it up from there. We'll give everyone a couple seconds right now to get that ready. Jim, are you ready from your end?
I think I'm ready. You want to give us a countdown?
Well, you may want to make sure you lower your volume.
Yes, I have muted the volume for us. But once again, please go back and even watch this first with Lance's audio and the crowd audio and see by the end of this thing how batshit the people are going. And then watch our analysis of it. It might even be more educational.
All right, we're going to count down from 5 and then press play. Once again, we are beginning right after Lance says, "Okay, no more to be said." 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And Lance sitting there you see right on the right side of his shoulder, there's a ghost. Anyway, okay, Wayne Ferris. Dundee's already bleeding. They are up in the press boxes with the camera because they were nominally shooting the 2-ring battle royal, and that way they could get to the side of it, but they wanted to be able to shoot this from up high. And Wayne Ferris has a chain. They've already been using a gimmick on I think that's how they busted him open on Dundee. And of course, Kevin Sullivan keeps trying to draw Dream in so that the referee can get him out and the heels can cheat behind the referee's back. Jimmy Hart down there with the cane. He was always so frantic. Remember, Jimmy has been in the business now a little less than 2 years as of this point. This is May 26, 1981. And he was, after only, a year, thrust into the top main event heel spot, right? So Jimmy, you'll see, just goes crazy later on in the finish, but that's what got heat on him. He was just such a fucking ball of energy for evil purposes. Anyway,
how many of these people in the front row do you know?
Well, I knew by sight every single one of them. They were the same ones every week, but it's not like we called each other on a regular basis. The side that the camera is on, this side would have been the side me and my mom used to sit front row on. And I knew a number of those folks. Anyway, Wayne Ferris had been, at this point, pre-Honky Tonk Man, had been a member of the Blonde Bombers, as I said, with Larry Latham. They'd been champions, so everybody knew he was Lawler's cousin, but they also, he had come into his own at this point. Sullivan was a star off TV. Boom. When you listen to the people here, just when Dundee rolls out of the way and has a chance to make a tag, the people pop and come up. And, of course, that was another Jerry Jarrett philosophy. The babyface has to sell and walk across broken glass to get to that fucking tag. And every time Dream will come in and try to help, the referee will put him out. Look at Dundee's body language. He'd stagger when you hit him. He'd put his hands up like he wanted to fight, and then he'd dish rag out. He didn't just take the same kind of bump over and over. You felt him, especially when the people could see him at ringside, see the blood on his face. See, often he would, when he was reaching for the tag, he'd here, calling to his partner. Anyway, but watch this, out of nowhere, boom, that's Dundee's finish, his Hail Mary. He didn't get a comeback. He just got to Paul slow with the count. But goddamn, the people popped just on that. He's still alive, but he can't get the fucking pin, can't get the tag.
Sullivan in fantastic shape here.
Sullivan was doing competition bodybuilding at this point. What was it? A year and a half later, he'd probably be 300 pounds, but he had ripped down to like 190 and had 3% body fat because he was in bodybuilding competitions right here. And see, Dundee, he would stay in the game. He would suddenly start swinging back, and then he'd get stopped from behind. And once again, this Hail Mary shoot off, and watch, he's not looking. Oh, he's disoriented. There's a double knockout the way it's supposed to be, not standing staring at the guy that's coming at you. But now look at the people, the kids in the front row. They just want Dundee to get the tag. And when Ferris misses, boom again. Oh, no. But once again, Dundee's bleeding. He's laying there. This is not rocket science, folks, and it's not complicated. And because in the context, all these people were viewed as stars to this audience. Now look at these. There's one live one for every two. Fucking hell, poor Wayne.
Those punches are great.
And Dream comes in to cut off the other heel that's attacking Dundee, but Dundee's still legal. So Dundee goes the corner. He can't find that. Jarrett loved to throw little Eddie Graham touches like that in there. Now see, fucking Wayne has fucking kicked him out and he's got the chain. But Dundee ducks the chain. Wayne has dropped the chain. Where is it? Oh my God. It's there. And now Dundee's got it. And this kid over here is going to have a fucking baby behind Jimmy Hart reacting to Dundee's got the fucking chain. And he's going to milk it, and boom, and that hurt. I guarantee you that one hurt. And that was okay. Now Wayne's going to get a little sauce. And now look at Dream just tattooing. Now it's starting to get out of hand. But Paul's still trying to get the illegal fucking guys. Dundee wanted probably Ferris to get his color first, and now he's on top of him. Boom, boom, boom. And now he's turned his back on Jimmy Hart. Here's Jimmy's spot. And Jimmy, 1 out of every 2 of Dundee's fucking punches was a potato. 1 out of every 2 of Jimmy's cane shots was a potato. The other one looked horrible. And then the second one hurt. And then boom, boom, boom. But now the disqualification, nobody gives a shit. It's a DQ. Nobody's booing the disqualification because they didn't have a clean finish. The heels manager came in and cheated. So, of course, they should lose this match. But now these guys have already been going 20 minutes. And now they've got to have this fucking fight until Jerry Jarrett in the back decides that they have got it, the fucking temperature in the building where he wants it to be. So they have no idea when the run-in is coming. That's in the old days. When you want to send the fucking run-in, well, let's feel it. So Jerry was going to feel it. So the job of these heels is to beat the shit out of these baby faces until that happens. The job of the baby faces is to act like they're in a fight and not just die and keep alive. But the people right now are fucking somewhat rumbling, but they're up, but still for the next fucking 45 seconds or so, they're just like, what the fuck's going to happen? And it goes on. And now they're tearing up Dream's mask. They're tearing the fucking mask off. And I think he's got some color too. You can't see because it's dark and it's video. But Dream's mask is torn. He's bleeding. Dundee has come back a couple times. Here comes Lawler. And now the people are going crazy. And Lawler starts swinging. Now the people, somebody to save the fucking day. And that was a nice one too. That shot on Wayne. Jimmy trying to stay away from that shit. And look at the body language. He's got the cane. And he's going to go nuts with that fucking cane. Boom, 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 and the people are going fucking crazy. But here come the nightmares. Shit, the other guys in Hart's stable. Wait a minute, we didn't count on this. And now you hear the people. The tone changes. Now there's 2 more fucking heels. Even if they're not goddamn top guys, it's now 5 against fucking 3, right? So people are fucking upset again. And look at Jimmy. Now they got to kick it in because now they know they have to get some fucking heat because they know Dutch is coming. And they got to get as much heat as they look. Dundee says, fuck it, I'm going to stay alive a minute. Somebody, there you go. He probably said to Jimmy across his shoulder, stop me. Because he always liked to get stopped from behind, like any babyface should. And then he'd go down like a fucking sack of wheat. Got to have some powder. Let's blind some motherfuckers while we're at it. And listen to the people now. It's just chaos. And they don't know how the fuck that these guys are going to get out of this. Because these heels ain't stopping and Paul Morton ain't going to make them. And they think if Lawler's come out, there's nobody else coming. He's the guy.
Which one of those 2 rings was the regular ring in Louisville?
The one that they're in now, the other one was a shitty one. That's why they're not using it. The Nightmares, by the way, like I said, I'll tell you in a minute. Well, here comes Dutch. Listen to these motherfuckers. And now just listen to the people. Well, you can't now, but go back and listen to it. And he's like, I'm just going to hit every fucking body. Danny Davis just took the bump over the top because he was like, I guess we're going now. But Dutch didn't stop coming back, so Danny fed some more. And now as Hart tries to get into it again, Lawler's back up, Dream's back up, Dundee's back up. They start pulling back wide. The people are going crazy now. And right about this time, Lance says, look at the scene in the Louisville Gardens. That became my code on OVW television when I was the announcer to Danny Davis, who was back there as the director when I wanted to go to a wide shot. Look at the scene in the Davis Arena. Here they go down. That's the heel aisle. That's the direction that the heels go to the locker room. Dutch into the fucking railing. They're still in front of the people here. The cops were not amused because they didn't like that shit. There's there's June Johnson in front of the blue graduation chairs with her walkie-talkie because they don't know this is coming. The people at the Gardens were smart that it was a work because they had to be, but they didn't know what the fuck was happening from one moment to the other. Dutch swinging. Here comes Hart with a big jump, and then he got 6 inches off the ground. So the sandbag with Kevin Sullivan. People were thinking, this is fucking it. They've gone too far. They've say what you want, but this is real. They've gone into business for themselves, however you wanted to phrase it. They had managed to convince these people with the escalating run-ins and the escalating level of violence that they were never allowed to see like this, that this shit had gone too far. Here goes Lawler, backwards down the fucking steps and watch him bowling ball Dundee, and Dundee just goes with it, boom, and down. And any old minute now, you're going to say, well, who's that Dutch with Danny over in the first? No, Danny's going to take the slam on the ground right here. Boom. Here goes, that was Patterson, the cop. They're going to get somebody that's tried to come over and attack one of the guys. And you'll see here in about 10 seconds, they're going to carry this fan with a full Nelson. Yeah. And by the leg, and the uniformed ushers, they took the other ones out the other way. Like I said, they got 3 or 4 of them out of this. And now it's starting to wind down. The fucking heels run, stagger, fight. See, this didn't take but 2 minutes, and it was chaos the whole time. Nothing was pre-planned and set up, and they fought in the environment rather than building things with the environment to put each other through as a stunt. On the left-hand side where the blue chairs are, and the rest of this is Lance and Dave, I guess we can pause that now, but where the blue chairs were, they often had a stage set up, which they did the following week for the 8-man tag. They had this, I've talked about the stage. It was about 5 feet high, and it was a movable, portable stage that stretched across the end of the Gardens, and there was about 5 or 6 feet in between the back of the stage and the wall. And that's where Lawler would every couple of years take his fucking George of the Jungle bump, where the heel would run him the length of the stage. He'd go off the back of it, hit face first, suspend himself face first against the wall in midair, and then drop to the floor. Sometimes they would use the environment, for shit like that. But anyway, because of the pandemonium that they stirred up in that building, because of the response they got, because of the fact that the cops were literally carrying people bodily out of the fucking arena, when everything got settled down, and nobody expected that, and it wasn't even the last match. We didn't know at the time what Jared had planned. Me and Weasel just looked at each other and said, that was the goddamnest thing we ever saw. But in context, the following week, it made sense. The main event was an 8-man tag team match. Jerry Lawler, Dutch Mantell, Bill Dundee, and the Dream Machine against Wayne Ferris, Kevin Sullivan, and the Nightmares with Jimmy Hart, 2 out of 3 falls. And we said, holy shit, the angle had the desired effect. Because everybody said, well, shit, that was crazy. We can't wait to see what's going to happen. And 2 out of 3 falls, holy fuck. So here's what they did, just from the Weasel's world of the time. That this was June 2nd, was the following week. Listen to this card. I told you talent was thin, right? This was the entire card for the Louisville Gardens that drew somewhere around 3,500 to 4,000 people. Nightmare number 1 substituted for Roger Howell and pinned Tim Leonard in the opening match.
Oof.
Yeah, Tim Leonard was a trainee, lasted about 3 months. Sonny King beat Cowboy Jim Dalton in 9 minutes. And Weasel mentions during the match, the top rope broke, which was the only exciting thing to happen in the whole match. Match number 3, Chick Donovan defeated Roy Rogers, Tommy Rich's cousin, Roy Rogers, defeated Chick Donovan by disqualification. That was the entire undercard. And then they had the 8-man tag. They had each of those matches went 10 minutes, and then they had a 15-minute intermission. And we're like, well, boy, this better be fucking good. Me and Weasel both, right? And by the way, Weasel Dooley was the only other smart fan in the Louisville Gardens, right? The only other one that traded programs, got results from anywhere else, traded videotapes, whatever. All the other fans traded pictures of their favorite wrestlers. So me and Weasel are the only, we're kind of looking at each other in the intermission beforehand is going, fuck, it's 8:45, right? This fucking match went almost an hour all in. They sent the fucking heels out, and they waited in the ring forever and got people and started yelling at people and got them pissed, and the babyface didn't come. Finally, the babyfaces come through the fucking side door, and they jump into the fucking ring, and they hit a goddamn 8-way, and they start brawling in the aisle and in the back, and back and forth. There's 2 in the back of the arena and 2 in the ring and 2 at ringside or whatever, and they fight for fucking 10 minutes, and then they ring the bell. And then they do the first fall, and they get a little heat, and they get a little comeback, and they do a disqualification on the heels in the first fall. And then they fight during the rest period, and then the bell rings, and they do a second fall where they disqualify fucking baby faces. And then they keep fighting, and then they do a third fall where they get some fucking blood, and they get some juice, and they fucking start going crazy, and they're all over the goddamn place. And finally, they... I've got it here somewhere. But basically, the Hart came in and used his cane, and the third fall, the heels got disqualified. And then they all fucking fought through the building for the next 10 minutes, including about a 13-foot drop that Danny Davis took off of Lawler from the fucking bleachers. And finally, it knocked some shit over, broke whatever that they felt like that they could pay for. And finally, the final bump was Sullivan grabbed Lawler and ran him across the stage, and he did his fucking face first into the wall, George the Jungle bump. And as he dropped there, the rest of the fucking baby faces chased the heels back into the locker room. And we said, well, fuck, that was better than last week and more of it. So that's got to be 6.5 stars. And the whole thing lasted, like I said, almost an hour. So the people were fucking blown away. And they came back the next week to see the fucking 8-man tag, no disqualification. And they did that 2 weeks in a row. In Louisville, at least. They had a few other things in Memphis. But in Louisville, they did 3 weeks, 4 weeks in a row of 8-man tag matches, and they all fucking drew because they were so crazy. And then by that time, the new talent had come in. They had some offshoots, some different things going on. Some guys were starting. Fucci and Onita were a little bit more over. And they pulled back, and they didn't have any more fucking arena brawls. Because if they'd have done it more than that, it was hot-shotting. And if they'd have done it too long, it would have killed their business instead of helped it. So they got through a 4-week period where they had literally 8 guys in the territory that they could put in a main event match, and they did business with it. Not only that, but if we go back to the Memphis Wrestling History book, 1970 through 1985 by Mark James, I promise I give him a plug. What they did in Memphis was a little different than in Louisville in that they did an 8-man tag match 2 weeks in a row, and then they went to Sullivan and Ferris against I think it was Dundee and Kern and Dutch, because they'd introduced Kern by that point. And then they did another 8-man tag for the winner to get a dream match, because that's when they introduced the dream matches. But the way that it all shook out in Memphis on June 29th was the card of dream matches. And I was there in person and went to that because of it was so fucking cool, the concept of it. They had teased that the winner of the 8-man tag match the previous week would get whatever match he picked, his dream match, right? Well, that didn't work out too well for the guy, so they did an entire card of dream matches. Wayne Ferris got a dream match, was a single match between him and Roy Rogers, where he thought he was going to fucking just kill Roy Rogers. Kevin Sullivan got a dream match, which was a 6-man battle royal with all the members of Jimmy Hart's first family and Dutch Mantell. So they were going to kill Dutch Mantell. One of the Nightmares got a dream match, which was a no time limit, no disqualification handicap match against the Dream Machine, where the Dream Machine would have to unmask if he got beat. Dutch Mantell got a dream match, which was a match with Kevin Sullivan with Jimmy Hart barred from ringside. Dream Machine got a dream match, which was no time limit, no disqualification. The Nightmares would unmask if Bill Dundee and the Dream Machine beat the Nightmares. And then Lawler's dream match was no time limit, no disqualification, a lumberjack match with Jerry Lawler one-on-one with Jimmy Hart. So out of the 8-man tag and the issue that you just saw that they started in Louisville the end of May, by the end of June, they had basically bridged the month of 8-man tags where they didn't have any talent, and they had created all these issues and stories in between these fucking guys to where they put this card on in Memphis and drew 10,129 people on the 5th Monday of the month of June and the second to last day of the month to see this card. And then the brilliance was every single person's dream match backfired except Lawler's. So he pissed the people off through the whole night. Kevin Sullivan's dream match battle royal backfired because the first thing they did when they rang the bell was Dutch Mantell jumped over the top rope and eliminated himself. And it left all the first family stand there with their dicks in their hands. But then others actually had matches, but in the finish somehow the guy who asked for the dream match ended up getting screwed, whether it was the heel, he got screwed, the babyface, he got screwed, whatever. And then finally at the end of the night, Lawler beat up Jimmy Hart, got juice on him, and allegedly broke his fucking leg. Because he had to, because they'd drawn 10,000 fucking people. And in the main event, the babyface was not going to get fucked. And then they turned around and fucking did angles off of those dream matches underneath with all the rest of the people for another month. And brought Jimmy Valiant back from the Carolinas to team with Lawler against the Dream Machine, who turned back heel and joined Jimmy Hart's stable, and Bugsy McGraw. And a month after that, they drew 11,600 to see Bugsy McGraw and the Dream Machine against Jerry Lawler and Jimmy Valiant. In 1981, the Dream Machine was in the main event of 4 different sellouts, I believe, in the Mid-South Coliseum. Anyway, so now we can look back, and I mean, all summer they were from the card that I gave you in Louisville, and it wasn't much better in Memphis. Memphis lineup of June the 1st was Sonny King versus Roger Howell, Plowboy Frazier versus Jim Dalton, Tojo Yamamoto versus Coco Ware, Tim Leonard and Chief Thundercloud against Onita and Fucci, Chick Donovan against Roy Rogers, Bill Dundee against Stan Lane, and the 8-man tag with Dundee working twice. The end of the month, they draw 10,000 people, and they follow that up weekly with drawing 7,300, 8,200, 9,200, 9,600, and finally selling out for Valiant's return at 11,600. That's booking. And that's what doing just enough to get people's interest, but not so much that they don't want to see it anymore, does for professional wrestling.
When was the 81 Tupelo concession stand brawl?
That is a good question. Hold on. Let me go back to the page I just closed. It was somewhere in September. Wait a minute. I know what, yes. Well, there you go. I was right. Because the main event at the Mid-South Coliseum, over the top of Handsome Jimmy Valiant and the Dream Machine for the Southern title, was a grudge match with Onita and Fucci against Ricky Morton and Eddie Gilbert. And that was done specifically because Jarrett wanted to try to make these 4 young guys, but especially the 2 young baby faces, look like main event guys. They did that fucking angle and beat the shit out of each other, so they got the main event spot. And having said that, they drew, according to the newspaper, 7,371 people. But to be quite honest, Jimmy Valiant and the Dream Machine for the Southern title and a 14-man battle royal with the loser getting his head shaved probably did as much for the house as the tag match. Because even though it was the best Tupelo concession stand brawl, it was also the third one in 2 years, and people had seen it and they didn't buy it anymore. It wasn't real. It was still real, but it wasn't the first time. They weren't shocked by it. It was like, oh, well, they probably saw Lawler and Dundee do it, and that's where they got the idea to take them in there and beat the shit out of them in the concession stand from Lawler and Dundee. You can't do an earth-shaking angle that reminds people of other talent that's not in it. So that's why the first one saved the territory, and the second and third one didn't move the needle at all when it came to business.
You know, this started as a watch-along and ended up really being a deep dive into the beginning of 1981 in Memphis. Well, it's fascinating stuff.
But see, that's the thing is if it's not a deep dive, you can't critique the performance because you don't know how people felt about the talent at the time that the people in the building that they were seeing them. Were they stars or were they underneath guys? You don't know how they were being presented. You don't know what came before it, what the reasons were for the incident, and what happened afterward, and what effect it had on business, unless you see what was happening beforehand, how it was set up, what the purpose was, and how it affected things afterwards. And about once a year, maybe it was because they'd switch off every 6 months or so. Lawler would book 6 months and Jarrett would book 6 months. But Lawler would hotshot more than Jarrett would. Jarrett would hotshot when it counted. Lawler would have 40 guys on the card in Memphis and 10 matches. And they'd divide the same amount of money up between 40 guys instead of 20. But Jarrett would only hotshot to get business back and only do it as long as he had to before he pulled back on it so he didn't go too far. And in the summer of 79, or late spring at least of 79, when Robert Fuller went back to Knoxville and took a lot of the talent, he does the original Tupelo concession stand brawl. And by July, from May, they've tripled business in the territory. In 1980, he was given a bad hand when Lawler got the broken leg, but that's when he made the decision to not only make Jimmy Hart the focal point of the heel side, but also to bring other people in to do things that would set shit up for later on and set up the Billy Robinson as the CWA champion well, so at least Lawler would have something to win when he got back. And then in 81, when he's got, the first month of summer, which was traditionally the best period of the year in the Southern territories, he ain't got any talent. So he shoots that, and he gets across to the other side until other people come in. In 79, he brought Fargo in. In 81, he brought a whole new crop of guys in and continues those things to keep interest, but he doesn't have to go crazy and fucking hotshot on a continual basis. And even if in those days, obviously, they didn't have the option. You didn't know when you were going to sell out the Mid-South Coliseum. You did a strong angle with top talent. You hoped for the best. But in some cases in those days, the old-time promoters, and Sam Muchnick was noted as doing this, if he had been hot for a while and sold out a number of shows in a row or did big business, he deliberately cooled it off. He booked a lesser card, or he booked something that he knew that, would draw a half a house, but just to calm the people down a little bit and just to not increase expectations. and then build something else for later on rather than trying to just hot shot it until you fucking wore it all out. So there were numerous times, and I've seen that. I don't know whether it was purposeful or not, but I've seen that in different time periods over the Tennessee booking where it was almost like they'd cool something off on purpose. And especially after Lawler and Dundee in 77, when they did what, 2 or 3 legitimate sellouts and 10 or 11 or 12 weeks of strong business, they followed that up with Lawler retiring. He retired for 6 weeks. It was a play on Elvis dying. They wanted to switch him babyface. When you got a guy drawing that much money, but he's a hometown guy, I can see where the temptation was to switch him babyface too, and people were starting to like him. But you couldn't just do it instantly, so they cooled off the territory for 6 weeks to build for his return, that then started drawing money again. Now, unfortunately, when he broke his leg, they cooled the territory off for 11 months. That was a little too long. But you can't just, like Shitstain once said to me, well, if we do it right, business will never go down, which was the stupidest thing that one of the stupidest people in the world ever said to me about the wrestling business. It's always going to go down for some reason. Something's going to happen. The idea is not to make it go down on purpose with shit you did or were in control of, but it's always going down. The real art is when it went down because of shit beyond your control, getting it back up with shit that is in your control. That's the art of booking wrestling. I have no end for this bit, so I will end there and take a small bow.
Well, good job. That was a fascinating history lesson. And of course, you could see the video with the audio synced up, patreon.com/Cornette. And thank you to everyone who has become a patron of the Jim Cornette's College of Wrestling Knowledge page. Lots more content coming up once you stop ordering.
You know what people are going to say? But there was no moonsault. There was no moonsault. Oh, and with the other thing, it looked like he botched it. He botched it.
No!
Botched it. No!
He botched it! There were no one in the stands where he fell down!
Yeah, you know what? Because the one guy botched the one move, and the finish sucked because it was a DQ. That's why those fucking 4 guys got hauled off to jail, because they saw it was bullshit right away.
Well, the proof is in the pudding. The results are out there for how good that program did.
As we said one time, as I said on Atlanta TV when we beat the Horsemen and had the world belts and the U.S. belts, they said the proof was in the pudding. Well, we got 40 pounds of gold pudding right here.